Welcome to More Good Drinks podcast. Adam Chapman beaming in from what I hope is the very sunshiny coast today. Thanks for taking some time to join us. You are, in fact, it's my privilege to announce you are the first true-blooded Australian to feature on the podcast, and hopefully one of many, many more.
Yeah,
so set the bar high.
I'll try. Can't promise, but I'll try. Thanks for having me, Tash. Yeah, it's good.
One of the reasons why I wanted to invite you on the podcast and have a bit of a conversation is because you play in a space that I'm really interested in, the space of rum, which feels like a category that on this side of the Tasman is really trying to stretch its legs and get some momentum. And, has always had both an agricultural home, but also kind of a long history and tenure on your side of the Tasman. But before we talk about rum too much, tell me a little bit about your journey into distillation, because you're one of so many great distillers I know who actually come from a winemaking background.
Yeah, thanks. I think it is an interesting thing. I mean, I had like 33 years as a winemaker and, did obviously a lot in Australia and overseas in Europe. And, it was great, I guess, for pretty much all of it. Maybe the last 5 years is a bit of a downer, but the main things there were a couple of things. Climate change, that's pretty true and live. And, example, when I started in the industry, we were crushing whites in March and reds in April. And, 30 years later, we're crushing whites in January, middle of January or something, and reds in middle of February. So that's real, over 30 years. So that sort of scared me a bit. And like most winemakers, you like to be sort of in control of what's going on in the vineyard. And I just found that harder and harder, with disease and, just things coming out of the blue, out of storms and hail and just Mother Nature getting angry at us. And so I sort of thought that and had a great idea. And of course, I went to my wife and said, I'm thinking about becoming a brewer. She said, why the hell do you do that? And I said, well, because I love beer. And she said, you're an idiot. And I said, oh, honey, I think that's a little harsh. So she grilled me down by saying, I've been teaching wine courses through WCT and, the spirits and all this kind of stuff. And she said, you love rum. I said, yeah, so what? She said, try distilling. And I thought, oh my God, I like to think I'm quite smart, but at that moment I thought I was pretty stupid. Anyway, so she set me onto that journey, bypassing the brewery straight.
Why rum? Is it just something that you always enjoyed and always loved, and therefore, or does the fermentation play, kind of lean into that winemaker side of you?
Yeah, look, firstly, it does. I love rum and mezcal and bourbon as well. But look, let's just stick to rum. Why rum? I suppose because if I go back to my wine side of thing, it's like you guys are in a cool continental climate, I mean, you guys are pretty good for making wines over there because of your climate. So for me, that was natural to always think about the climate. And I just thought, well, I love rum and it's like the Caribbean over here, it's just, tick. Okay, well, that's a good idea. So that was the big thing. And then, you're right with the fermentation. I accept it's a 180-degree flip the winemaking. But, a lot of, wild fermentation, wild bacteria, and, just sort of trying to develop flavors and esters through a bit of science and a bit of fun.
Now, you are primarily working with molasses base?
Yeah, like 98%. I do dabble in sugarcane juice rums, but not a lot.
Why that choice? Because the advantage that Australian rum makers have over New Zealand rum makers is that, we've got pockets of backyard sugarcane, but you guys actually are a really prime climate for growing, and consequently you've got a choice of sugarcane byproducts to use. Why molasses for you? What does it offer?
The whole talk's going to relate back to wine, but I guess that's where I've come from. And we don't often talk about it in spirits. It's body. I love the richness and the weight and power and muscular sort of character of the molasses rums compared with the sugarcane juice rums. And I'm purely sort of saying, Jamaica versus Martinique or something like that as an example. But I'm not saying you can't really make a muscular style rum, but just leave it there. Yeah, that's my answer, if you like. And we are covered around with it. I wanted a bit more stability in my life as well. So coming off molasses, and my dad always said, if you're going to do something different, have a reason, have a story. So the main reason was I found organic molasses, and there was 5 farms, and we had the rights to it, and we still do. And so I thought, well, shit, hang on, I could make a pretty good full-bodied, rum that was organic. And I just thought, wow, that suits me for wild yeast and wild bacteria. And that was the reason. So.
It's interesting that you talk about that in terms of something that we don't discuss in the world of spirits. It's such an important component: texture, mouthfeel, the structure. I know certainly when I'm sitting at an assessment table or a judging table, that is something that comes up, but it's not something you necessarily hear makers talk about a lot. Is there a reason why we should be having that conversation a little more often? Is there something that we're missing in the way we share or introduce the idea of how texture and structure and mouthfeel and body come together in a spirit?
Yeah, I do it a lot mentally, and I've also got to say it doesn't pop up in the WCT program, so I can't sort of claim. I've tried to put it in there with the guys that write it back in the UK, and didn't go anywhere. But it doesn't worry me. I still have a big thing when I look at the rums. I just look at probably a scale of 5. Just sort of light, pretty, right up to heavy, fat, bold. And it's not just flavours. You're right. It does come with a lot of texture. And so I started to really look at texture and sort of try and nut that out. And then I had a plan for flavour. And then I just said, right, well, flavour comes off texture, and texture comes off good materials and good sort of understanding of yeast and bacteria. So, yeah, a lot of that is it's one of my things we can maybe talk about later is a tasting scale. I use everything in numbers. So we have a scale on body, and it's just 1 to 5, and when we're tasting, it's very simple. You just write 3, B3. It's nothing technical. It's just
Well, let's talk about that tasting scale that you use, because, our paths have first crossed really with the opportunity to get to know your knowledge and background sitting alongside each other at a judging table. And assessing and understanding spirits is, I think, it's kind of to many people, it's a bit of a mysterious kind of a shroud of a bottle goes into an awards and then it comes out and it has a shiny sticker on it, one way or the other. But I'd love to know a little bit more about how you approach that tasting scale that you have, and what the benefits are of being able to break something down that way, particularly when it comes to education.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I reckon it's almost like I have 5 different heads, and for some reason, don't ask me how I do it, but yeah, it's like I have the winemaking one, I have, the distilling one, I have a WCT one, I have a judging one, and just maybe a commercial hello person. You can't sort of use those stuff. So there's another. And it's quite interesting. I find that I can easily bounce in between them. It's a bit like the metric and the imperial system. It's, I'm just at that age where I can bounce in between it, so I don't see any different. But I use, example, brown fruits. I don't really go into, and that's the opposite in WCT. It's like, well, okay, yeah, it's one level, brown fruits, but what type of brown fruits? Fig or toffee or cream caramel. I'm not going that deep when I'm talking about barrels with another distiller. I just say, look, this has got a good level of brown fruits. How good, again, just 4. And then the same sort of thing is I do it by groups. So tropical fruits, brown fruits, floral, what else are we talking about? There's texture, there's pepper, as far as that sort of thing called acrolein or rotunda, which is like a lactic spoilage pepper character in juvenile spirits. That can be a bit of a negative. So that's simple. If I see that's high, we just go 5. And that in the formula, that just comes off the score. So, there's real reasoning about doing things. And then I have another one called a juvenile character, and I've got 3 kids. But they're all over that age of 18 now. And I just found you're a juvenile until you become 18. Become an adult. And what happens when you're a juvenile, you just need to mature. You can see where I'm going with this. So a bit, not 18 years, but what I'm getting at, if I do see acrolein or rotunda in young spirits, I'm not worried about it. I might just go back, hey, what do we do with the ferment? What do we do here? Get a bit of grief. Oh yeah, no dramas. And just time heals those things and just needs more time. So once you sort of, that character, I've seen it 3-4 years down the track, I've go back to the notes, and it's like almost every year 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on that barrel, and now I don't see it. And it's when you go back to the science side of thing, that's what happens with oxidation and time. So that improves and drops out. So those kind of things, we can just really come to a really definitive score. We talk about balance, domination of any of the other characters. It's a bit of a formula, but I just, rather than, I mean, I don't want to get into judging. A lot of people hate me for it because I'm opinionated, but
Opinions make for good debates, which make
yeah,
for
I know.
excellent
But
podcasts.
my thing I do here at the distillery is it's like nuts and bolts. It's maths, and it works. And I know you can sit there and say 20 or 100 out of points, but kind of doesn't. It works, but and it's good enough, and as long as everyone's on the same scale. But yeah, I just find that it's a bit less subjective here in the distillery if we're looking at a spirit and just talking about body. If I give something 2, well, and I'm looking to make in my head a 5, well, this gets pushed back, and I don't waste any more time on it. Like, I just don't worry about sorting out the other numbers. There's a priority of what we're looking for, and what's the number. If it gets 4s and 5s, and that's where we're going, well, let's bring it forward. It's just sorting that sheep out. I'm sorry.
The there's a rigor to it, but at the same time, it's a simple enough. What you're describing is a simple enough process that it makes the rigor, applicable without
And
you can use it
texture's
day to
not
day.
just texture. I mean, some I go deeper. Texture's one of them. We sort of work out a volume of it, and then we're going down. Well, is it super gelatinous, or is it just round and soft? There's quite a big difference. You can give that a number, but it's almost like we go down and do another number after it, and that just means a little bit more. So one day I'll show it to you. Pretty weird. But
Well, I mean,
I really think it works.
yeah, and I've been impressed when I've seen it in action around the assessment side of things, and I can only imagine that in a distillery practice, it's incredibly helpful to have that. To have one, you're starting at the end of, like, that's what you're describing really is, okay, here's where I want this particular barrel, or this is where I want this
Yeah,
particular
we
product to
mainly
blend.
use it on barrels. Yeah, not young
Yeah.
spirit. Well, I mean, we do. We have a different thing for young spirit. Yeah.
Mhm. But yeah, so I mean, it just sounds like you're starting with a clear idea of where and how you want the spirit to develop, and
Mhm.
you're tracking it as it goes, so that then when it's ready to be used, in whatever format that is. So talk to me a little bit about what you're producing, and the things that you're putting your name and your signature distillation and maturation style to.
Yeah, look, well, we'll go right back to 2020 when we started. I did 35, I think it was 35 distillations and commercial ferments using commercial yeast, just to show the owners and the people in the business that, we can make some nice rum. And then I said, "Are you happy with that?" And they said, "Yeah, this is looking good." And I said, "Well, I don't really like it. So I'm going to just show it's fine, but I don't really think this is where we're going to go with it." And they were almost a bit shocked. So pretty much they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, can I have another 35 days distillation?" Not big batch. Well, they were decent batches, I guess, 4,000 litres of each. And, I'd made another. So it was 35 or 36 to 70 of all wild yeast and the influence of, Dunder, muck and cane vinegar and all that kind of stuff. And then I sort of showed them those young spirits, and they just said, "Holy shit, this is, we understand it now." And I said, "Well, good. So you're comfortable, just leave me alone and not spend money on yeast and that." And they said, "Yep, fine." But I had to do that not in an ego thing. I just had to do that I could do that, and showed that, well, I was comfortable of bringing the wine concept over, but I had to prove it myself, and I didn't want to be financially stupid with it. So I just approached it on a common sense basis. And then the idea of sort of like, I sort of do have in my head a 5-year, sort of 3 5-year plans, and they're sort of radically different. So the first sort of 5 years were ranging of sort of reasonably high levels of Dunder, and then at the sort of 2.5 years, a little bit of introduction of muck, and then the high levels of muck, and then we dropped the Dunder down. And that was sort of 2025. And then now what I'm doing is 25 to, what are we? Yeah, 26 to 30, which one what we're in now is, didn't know what you was, is a lot of molasses vinegar and no muck and no Dunder. And yeah, it's just like, we've morphed, I see it at the moment, because no one else has really seen them. It's like we've morphed into another planet. This is not, which is kind of cool, but that's what I want. So fast forward, I won't tell you what's going on in the next 5 years, but you can sort of understand 3 lots of volumes of 5 years gives you 15 years and amazing an array of blending materials. And,
Hmm.
whether I get hit by a bus, well, someone else has got a great legacy of, leaving it there and all the paper trail. And, I'm very particular of that, a bit anal retentive, but, whoever comes in and I die and, that they continue if they wish to make it and follow it. I don't take shit to the grave with me. So
Now, you're a great educator, and we'll come back to that in a second. It's okay. I'll give you a moment to let the
depend
compliments
who's
sink
who's
in.
talking. Yeah, thanks.
But you are a great educator. Give us your best layman's breakdown of, because some of the key components that you've just talked about. For a lot of people, they pick up a rum, they're not thinking about, oh, this is Jamaican in style or Guyanan in style. They're just thinking about, do I like it? Do I not like it? So break down for us some of those really key components that you're talking about in terms of dunder, muck, molasses vinegar, how those elements of rum making actually impact the process.
Yeah, okay. Well, straight up, I think this is certainly for me and what I've seen here, not Adam says all over the world influence, just to put that in place. I find time with Dunder does help increase that body.
Hmm.
That's and flavour, obviously, but there's a big difference for me of understanding flavour because if we that's I'll stick to the rules. Yeah, okay. So Dunder sort of ultimately will give us body and a bit of flavour. Muck is sort of like supercharged petrol. And you've got to have the right engine to use it. There's no point just having muck. You've got to have the right engine, and the engine is the right yeast because it's just really hostile. And I'll break these down as we come back, but I'll just clearly answer it. So muck is, it's a bit like, the eau de perfume or eau de toilette or eau de cologne. I mean, what do you want? Light, medium, and intense. Just whatever. And then we make a couple of different muck pits, and then cane vinegar is a bit more. I don't know. I'm a bit more intrigued with that at the moment. That's probably, I like to think, my go-to because I'm I'm planned it out. I'm going to do it for 5 years, and I'm nearly convinced that I can get body and flavour and some intensity. That's the plan, but
Hmm.
I don't know if it happens. Now, there's trade-off getting back to the engines and things like, I don't know, can I use the word fatty acids and stuff? Is this okay?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So things like fatty acids, like, acetic acid and butyric and all those kind of fun things, usually derived in muck or cane vinegar. And prolifically, it's usually about 95% acetic acid in most of these things. And we test this. That's the other reason why, I'm a bit nerdy, and talk nerdy, but the thing is I've also tested and know what happens and the results. So that's one thing I like doing. We're finding I like to try and manipulate. So it's sort of like a game of, I don't know, perfect match. Did you ever have that in New Zealand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got sort of like 5 fatty acids and 5 different alcohols, and it's sort of like, which match comes up to make, butyric is like baby vomit, and put butyric and ethanol together and you get ethyl butanoate, which is roasted pineapple. Like,
Delicious.
I think it's cool, So those are kind of things that we're playing around with. But in my own little IP world, I'm trying to sort of sort out what triggers those and how can we reduce acetic and increase all these other concentrated acids and stuff. So it's pretty nerdy. And there was a guy and this is why I love all New Zealand and New Zealanders, a guy by Callum Upfold. He's a great New Zealander, and he's considering me a very good mate, and we have a lot of really nerdy conversations. But unfortunately, he's left New Zealand.
Yes. And poised for great success was line 44. And
Mate,
then,
he's gone to
distracted.
Cairns,
Unbelievable.
and I've seen some of the stuff he's doing, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, that space. Another one. Maybe go to him.
Mm-hmm.
Three. And I put him down. Actually, just wait for him, like number 10 Australian or something. Yeah, so that kind of stuff is, but look, in reality, it's like getting back to your countries and stuff, it's sort of about the basics, French using agricole, and, it's still, just not making it into molasses. It's just sugarcane juice, and it's fermented pretty much straight away. They tend to make a little bit lighter, pretty grassy, herbal, herbaceous, sometimes tropical fruit characters, and Martinique, and, that's sort of picking up a bit of momentum around Australia. We can't call that because of our law, so don't wind me up on that one. We can talk about the 124-year-old stupid law, but maybe later. So write that one down. So yeah, what else? Oh, so we've got the Spanish style, which is traditionally sort of, Solera methods, molasses base, adulterated potentially with, sugars and reserve sweet barrels. So a lot of them do come across as a little bit perceived. And you can say consumer, if they watch this, well, what's that doing? Well, first of all, they probably won't see it, but they'll probably go, this is really yummy, and delicious and builds body and fatness and moreish, and that's why consumers love it. But I think if you got to be transparent. I mean, my dad always said, I can't get in trouble for telling the truth. So sometimes it gets me in trouble, but it's majority. I don't use it. I just, it's not my preferred style. There you go. There's a clever way of doing it. And then we've got the English style, which of course Barbados and Jamaica and that's just the main ones, and they're just big, bold, and dominating use of muck and dunder, and a bit sort of where the style I go. The ones I do, I've only had it twice. It was Coroni, that sort of rocked my socks when I first saw that. Both in I'm good. I haven't paid for it yet, but yeah, my friends opened it up. Yeah, I do have one friend like that, and yeah, they're just hugely expensive, but sort of understanding their style, and they go to barrel like it's 70 or 75 ABV, and you can't drink them or taste them and go anywhere near them for 10 years. So that was sort of an eye-opener. And then I'm sort of trying to say, well, what's my perfect style using those island method? And, it's almost a bit of probably French and, that sort of English style, nice body and some good S's and feel and funk to it, but you got to be, this is what I'd like to drink doesn't mean the rest of the world does. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't. It's curious, like something like, the Hampton or something like this. This is kind of cool, but mate, 98% of rum drinkers can't stand it. So the trade-off for me is, and you can't do it in one barrel. That's the only problem, is get something that's really full-bodied and really high ester. Technically, this can't happen. So I'm just sort of working on trying to bend that rule. Anyhow,
so many things to unpack in what you've just talked about.
Yeah.
So the first place I want to start is you spoke about, your style being a combination of French, English, what have you. Is there, when you started your experimentation and your kind of your R&D process, lockdown was helpful for something. When you started that process, were you aware, or did you feel like you were kind of a bit of an outlier in terms of what other rum makers in Australia were doing? And do you think that there is, because I have an opinion on this, which I'll hold for a second, but is there an Australian style of rum emerging? Or is there, or do you see
at the moment,
actually
I just think, no, I've just got to come out and say no, just don't press no. Is that a shame? Yes. It's too big, I think, at the moment. And, there is
too big and too small at the same time?
No, just things like cane spirit, like what the shit? Like it's just a 1901 law about taxation and distillation toxicity. Like, okay, fine, we're in 2026 now. Let's just change the model for white rum, leave dark rum the same, just leave it as unaged white rum. Like, what's the problem? That's my big thing. And, I was drinking, I love Haitian rums and stuff, just white rums, and that probably did a lot for me, and Reunion Island, Savannah and stuff. And of course, Hampton and Long Pond, they're probably my big sort of four, and they sort of rocked my world a bit. And I just, go back to Haitian, a third world country, and they had like 5 different distilleries and 5 different sugar canes and 5 different terroirs. And I'm just sitting here looking at, 5 glasses going, it's all the same. They smell totally different. And I get goosebumps, it's just brought me back to the wine. It was the terroir and the approach, and, there was none of this high education, high engineering. It's just what they've been doing for centuries there, and it's rustic and it was raw and it was real in these bottles. And I just thought, man, that's just captivated me. So I believe there's an element of terroir. We're kind of lucky because I've got 5 blocks and we do have a terroir where we're getting it from. But I just think I don't really want to talk about it and how it differs until I get to about 10 years, because I just believe it's got to show in the end product, not as we bring it in and we lose it. So
Hmm.
I've got
Yeah.
it there, but I don't really. It's another
Well,
project.
I mean, that's the commercial hat, like I see it slide on right there, right? Where you go, okay, if there's a rigor to an intuitive sense about what is happening and the markers that you can see developing, but actually the time to talk about it will be when it's in the proof and
Yeah,
you can
it's got
talk
to be
about it.
there. It's almost like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's good. Sugar could be even identified by HPLC or something. I mean, that's sort of where I'm grasping for. They just like to say, "Hey, this is this character, and I've got it from my blocks." And believe me, and people go, "Oh bullshit," You don't want that. You want your thing and come out. Bang. Here's a bit of science about it. And this is where we think it's happened. That would be good to do, but just
Hmm.
we're too young. We're only 7 at the moment. Well, 6.5, and we've got another 3.5 years before we think we can probably do that.
But hey, it's always good to have goals. And I think, there's a parallel with Juno Gin and the work that they've done with Venture Taranaki and Massey University, studying actually New Zealand native grown or New Zealand grown botanicals versus their imported cousins and the different altitudes and climate within which those are grown and how they actually deliver in terms of flavor compounds. uh,
Yeah, it's just
and
amazing.
and that's really incredible to be able to have that piece of work to say, right, actually, in some instances, we're able to see that New Zealand grown Angelica root is phenomenally more efficient
Mm.
in the distillation process when it comes to gin. So that is kind of interesting, and it shines a light on, I guess, future direction for what the possibility of, maybe it's not an Australian style of rum. I have a thesis that we have Pacific rum right now, and that Pacific rum is defined not by a single terroir or a single style in terms of flavor, texture, or aroma, but by approach. The process is, right, what are we making from what we can get access to here? And then how does the exploration of flavor influence that? Because so many of the people who are making rum in your neck of the woods and my neck of the woods, and even to an extent in Fiji, where there's still some distillation happening, it's very much driven by people who are rum heads, and they're in a dogged pursuit of flavor and texture, which means that there are components which are more interesting. They don't necessarily have the same consumer curbside appeal that more familiar styles, more familiar Jamaican Caribbean styles might
Yeah,
have. And so there's a real sharp edge to what people are working on, like what Callum was working on, what some of the team here are.
yeah. And I think, when I went to London to do set the original 2019 level 3 spirits and then bring it back to Australia. I got shown and the launch, it was pretty much Hampton in 2019. And then when people read about it, they go, oh, it's been making rum there for 400 years. Yeah, but, 390 years has been making it for perfume. And, and other mixed rums in Germany and so on. But I think that's another sort of wow moment in the rum world for me is when that sort of Hampton came out and they've just got all these barrels and look, why the shit haven't you done this like 200 years ago? And yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a few of the islands I think could be doing maybe that sort of terroir style. But I guess why I'm a little bit anti to say it is because it's like saying, did we can we talk about like Scotch or single malt? No. Yeah. I mean, if you
Always.
take the Scotch for Scottish, I always had a little laugh at that, they could be talking about all their rules in the world and, oh, yeah, it's beautiful blue. But let's face it could be from the barley, could be from London or Germany,
Mhm.
and they're using bourbon barrels. So there's a strong element of corn and German in single malt whiskey, just playing around, just saying, no terroir, okay? You sort of
Mhm.
rule that out. So I just thinking the people that are using or either growing, like I can prove, and I've got an ACO, which is not apprehension violent order, what do you call it? Australian Certified Organics. I don't know where that came from. I've got 3 numbers. So I've got one for the 5 parcels of land. I've got it for the mill, and I've got it here for the distillery. So we're setting ourselves up right to do that. And I think if people are going to talk about terroir, they really need to almost have that locked down. I'm going to mention one famous distillery in the world that has changed mainly from molasses that because they ran out in their island and went to now fresh sugarcane juice, but trying to lock down the terroir maybe after 30 years. But yeah, no, that's fine.
I mean, all of these components, right? They just go to illustrate that rum is just, it's the most complex, it's the least regulated, but the most sub-regulated spirits category in the world, where you have vast regions of rum that curtail to a certain, overall style, but within that, such inconsistent geographic appellations, such variety of production methods, so much an enormous lack of disclosure, in certain parts of the industry, which is a really good time to pivot and start talking about transparency and understanding and education. Because one of the things that does leap off the page about you, but also just in person, is that you are naturally an educator. You sort of seem to teach in almost every second of your interactions.
Beaten out of me the wrong way to do it by an English school teacher. But anyway, keep going.
Well, I guess my question is, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you still the only Australian that's qualified to teach all three levels of wine and spirits, or have you got some competition hot on your heels?
Practicing, possibly yes, but to be fair and to put it up again, transparent, I help teach about 13 Australian BCT level 3 educators in wine their spirits exams to be able to get them through, and I was quite happy to do that, and I've probably got 10 of those through.
Mm-hmm.
The others, I haven't seen the rest. And of course, one you've got is Ben Leggett. So Ben's done a couple of them there, but it's hard work. It's hard work for the course, the student, and to cover everything from, Bijou to Pisco to single malt, plus all the laws and stuff, and then talk about, fractional distilling and, compounds and isomia alcohol and how do you remove it. I mean, it's an interesting course, but I found I don't know why no one else is teaching it. Well, I do know. I think just because they're not distilling, and you've got to have your head in there. You've got to have, and I'm probably lucky that I've had not so much 30 years in distilling, but I've had 30 years in winemaking and science and stuff. So, but I still take that as, it's always a challenge. And the biggest thing I said back to WCT people, that the people you can get in this course, once you start teaching, you go, I think I've got it. That's when you worry, because like my big one that I had was I had an aeronautical engineer do it, and he works at Nort Distillery in
Mm-hmm.
Yarra with Chris Cameron, and this guy, lovely guy, Connor, and we're having a debate in front of all the other students, and I'm going, oh shit, he's going to get me here, and just technical and rubbing it all up, and he goes, oh, I don't know, and stuff. And I said, look, why don't we have a break and we'll go and have a coffee? And anyway, I just talked to him one-on-one, and he goes, no, fuck it. Sorry. He said, you're actually right, 100% right. He said, now I've come around to it. And I said, yeah, sorry for doing that. And that was, it's not about being wrong or right, but I knew he was an aeronautical engineer, and you got to have balls of steel to stand up there and talk about something fractional distilling and have that guy sitting in there in the audience as a student to either strip you down or say that's bullshit, mate. And that's where I think you got to be careful how you come across. You can come across potentially cocky and knowledgeable, but you just got to come across and say, I'm helpful. There may be something in here that you guys may know more than me. And I always say that. And I think that gives me a bit of a caveat, and it's true, I'm not a professor to know everything, but, that's been the most, and it can happen quite a lot in spirits, more so in spirits and wine. You just get more engineers and more technical people in there that want to apply stuff. Again, like my ex-distiller here now is in Archie Rose Lockie. When I had him, so 4 years chemical engineering degree, right? So here we are at the spirit still cutting in for heads to hearts, and I said, listen, mate, I said, we've got to get this right. And talking about, I won't drag it on now. I said, listen, the main things is we've got to actually, get rid of not only the methanol, but the acetaldehyde. But let's just focus on the acetaldehyde. Mate, you write with this? And I said, I'll be back in a minute. I did it deliberately. And I think I got about 4 meters away. And he's, no, hang on. No, what am I doing? And I said, well, just cut the acetaldehyde. And he said, it's finished, mate. Just make the cut. And no, look, no, come back. And I said, what's the problem? He said, well, I know everything about where it comes from and how it's made and developed and blah, blah, blah. And he said, but I just don't know what I'm cutting out. I said, fuck, you said it's acetaldehyde. He goes, how? And I said, it's green apple. It smells like green apple, mate. I'm a chemical engineer for 4 years and I never knew that. I tell you what, this guy, he went back and looked at every single compound, worked out what the smell and flavour was. Very powerful guy now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my classic example that you got to know sensory and science and stuff to be able to come up. And like, as I said, if there's pepper in there, gee, and it's good, but young distillate pepper and it's almost radish character. That's a spoilage thing of lactic and or acrolein or rotundone. And you got to be, it's like a dartboard. You got to go poof and understand, well, what do I do? Do I leave it? Do I panic? Do I, throw it out? All those kind of things I found that super interesting, but it's probably nerdy. It's not everyone's thing. So,
well, this nerd is rapt attention when it comes to it. I mean, there's nothing like going to a tasting or sitting around a sensory panel where you've got people identifying things that they know ought to be there in the finished product, but it's so much more interesting when you're actually 2 steps back from that and
just
tasting something, smelling something, and going, actually, this isn't finished or this isn't ready.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to work in an industry where there are still enough young players that every so often something does make its way through to the table where you're just like, actually, that's faulted, or there's something in there that shouldn't be there, and I'm not interested in going any further with it.
That's go on. I was going to say what I've got is just an interesting thing, just to make it more interesting for you. I have on that point trying to bring that to the public. I'm trying to bring that concept, but I'm trying to make it easy, not nerdy. So what I've already written, and again, I haven't let it out to anyone of the IP wise, but I've written, maybe 10 good compounds and 5 bad compounds. And I've written maybe 10 headings on one page to help them understand where it comes from. What is it? Just like a template. I'll read that. Not a technical term, but it's technical, but it's simple to understand. And then I want to give them a little vial so they can smell it. This is almost like, do it online yourself. Don't need anyone. And I'm trying to do that for the distilling industry and the wine industry and the beer industry to help people. And because I see it in shows, I see it in judging. And, I've done, obviously a lot of being assessed. That's the thing. You're being assessed blind. No idea what's going on too many times in my life by professionals and bodies. And probably the hardest one was the Australian Wine Research Institute with the Advanced Wine and Palate Assessment course. And, just quickly there, I had, we're doing Rieslings, and I think it was 30 Rieslings or something. And, Chapman, stand up. It was like the military. Riesling 10, read it. And it's all, when you do it, or it's like duplicate paper, so you can't change it. That scared the shit out of me to start with. Chapman, read wine 10. So I stood up and read it. Good. Thank you. Sit down. Actually, Chapman, stand up. Read wine 21. It's the same wine. Read your notes out now. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but I think it wasn't far off it and looked okay. But that's all I'm saying at the moment. But that kind of stuff, putting the same wine in, same ability across, has never left my brain. And I'm always looking for, little like star diagrams. Why is this different to that? And what potentially the compound? That's sort of, don't go too deep, but that's sort of where I'm looking for. I'm always on the hunch for saying the difference and what makes this difference and blah, blah, blah. So anyway.
Mm-hmm. I remember in my level 2 WSET, a tutor who we shall not name, deliberately playing a couple of gotcha games.
You don't do that for your students. That's bad sport.
Well, I mean, you can understand why. Sometimes there's some, you can understand why people get to a point of wanting to play the gotcha game, but I'm not sure that it's ever that helpful in terms of, it's the same as counterfeit money. How do you recognize counterfeit money? You look at the right one, you look at the real one over and over and over again until the counterfeit becomes immediately recognizable. But you have to know why the counterfeit one is immediately recognizable. And so that's why, it's important to know, why is this banana lollies? Why does every bourbon with this process and this particular protocol smell like banana lollies? Here's why, or why pear drops, or why green apple?
Don't,
What's the characteristic,
don't send this to America. They'll kill me.
That's hilarious. What is are we doing enough? What benefit does it bring to the broader distilling industry to go further and learn more and understand more about the sensory assessment? Because there are these two distinct paths, right? And the really simplified version has been, if you want to distill things and make things, you go and do your IBD, your International Brewers and Distillers. And if you are consumer facing or front facing, or you just want to be able to talk about and describe things, you do your WSET. But I agree with you. So that's a rare occasion. Let's just ding, 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 ring the bell for that. But I agree
It's
with you
recorded,
in
isn't it?
terms of how important the sensory and the technical knowledge are together, because they are one and the same in my mind. They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky, as I said, I've done quite a lot of both of those. And it sort of does, I don't want to get ugly here, but it sort of does rub me up a bit the wrong way when you just get someone like, I'll talk about, Melbourne show. There was just some judges there that just, I'm not going to name them, but just had absolutely no idea. And they were just giving it a bronze medal. And I'm not out there to bag Melbourne show. I'm just saying in this particular class, it was just shocking. And then, I've had a couple of conversations, and that's been brought up a couple of times. And then, you just sort of think, well, Australian wine, I go back to my wine roots, and that's why they created the advanced wine palate assessment. You had to do that and to become a judge. And then you had to do 3 years as an associate judge under those judges that had that to be able to get stability and I still think my biggest thing, rather than just, trying to create a shitstorm, is I just think we need to look at our past with wine, what they had done, how do we do it better in the industry? And I'm telling you, that's how it is. But there's so many people in this spirits industry that look at me like I'm the idiot. Yeah, well, I can be a fun idiot, I can also be a dickhead and whatever, but at least I can admit to it. I mean, a lot of people can't do that, but the thing is, I am very passionate about it. I'm very caring, and I'm not saying I'm always right, but I do have a good foundation that I can sort of almost lay it out the workings, and that's something you don't want to butt heads. I don't like that, and I don't think anyone likes saying that as well, but I just think you just got to do more. People have got to do more. They've just got to educate and taste and be tested and prove to themselves, not just you testing, I can pick that. It's just time after time. It's always just being, reset, we won, whatever it is, 25 and 26, most successful distiller in Australia, but at the Queensland show. Great. That was 25. Move over. 26. Shit, we did it again. Okay, well, that's good. I can talk about it for another year. But after 26, I'm never going to talk about it until you win it again. So it's only... You're only as good as you currently, and that's the thing why I think, I'm always trying to push a few boundaries and taste things, learn things, read things. I just got Matt Strickland's book. I'd like to think I'm probably the first one in Australia. It's not about making whiskey, and that's what people miss. It's about education, and I've picked up so much out of the bourbon industry and the mezcal industry from tasting and drinking and education and history and historical and cultural things that I now use in the rum. And people that just drink whiskey just think that it's all just about reading whiskey books. It's not. It's get the latest. And for me, my hero, I come out and say Matt Strickland is one of the greatest, I think, distillers and educators and nice blokes and smartest blokes, and can talk to normal people behind his cellar door as well. He's just, I think he's 3 books that he's got. I just, I'm nearly going to, fuck it, I will say, I said, you shouldn't be distilling unless you've read his 3 books. There you go, I said it. It's the rocky world, mate. Yeah. Batch distilling, cask management, and whiskey grain to glass. It's fantastic stuff.
The winemaker at Two Paddocks Winery, Dean, his last name.
You're going to say Sam Neill, isn't that still Sam Neill?
Yeah, Sam Neill's winery. Dean's the winemaker there, and he once said in the middle of a very rambling speech couple of years ago, he said this one profound statement. And the profound statement to me was that is that young winemakers have no excuse to make old winemakers' mistakes, but old winemakers' responsibility is to ensure they don't, right? So
Yeah.
So there's a real sense of, and I think there's a poignancy to it because
Hang on.
on both sides of
Are
the
you saying I'm
Tasman,
old? No,
not remotely.
I know I'm old. That's why I'm getting more vocal. Yeah.
On both sides of the Tasman, the spirits industry, save maybe Bundy,
What's
the
that?
distilling
Oh, the
industry,
town. There you go. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
the distilling industry is still relatively young. It's
Yeah,
barely
it is.
adolescent, and therefore, if we position ourselves in terms of everything about what we do, and then moves to the fermentation before we go anywhere near distillation, and so if we look at those two things, we have an awful lot to learn from the old winemakers. So yes, I am calling you old,
Yeah, that's fair enough. But
but
here's
but
the
it's
thing.
important.
Here's the thing. What I think people should do, and it might shock them, because I know where my weakness is if I talk about a particular spirit and taste, and I know I've got to learn more, and that's Baijiu.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everything you just said. 800 years or 2,000 years of making Baijiu. And if you want esters, well, it's in there. There's lots of dead body and stuff in there. But I can talk about that now on how it becomes dead body. That's the kind of weird thing that I've learned since understanding
Mm-hmm.
Baijiu. And that's my soft point. So I do have, I don't want to become a master of Baijiu, but I just find it intriguing. It's really off-putting. It's weird. It's strange. It's in another culture, and you must respect that. And that's why I'm sort of heading down. Other than Matt Strickland, I'm reading some interesting stuff about Baijiu. And I don't want to ever make Baijiu, but you just got to understand, you got to almost taste and drink, and that it almost is like FOMO. Not FOMO,
Mm-hmm.
no, fear. You got to fight
Mm-hmm.
fear with fear, and you got to read stuff you don't
Mm-hmm.
really. Oh, that's horrible. I'm never drinking that. I'm never making that. And that's what people do. And I'm going, you got to find out why you don't like it. That's
Yeah,
over.
exactly.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
going, well,
Mm-hmm.
give me the glass.
I always start when I'm doing a tasting, particularly with consumers, that my starting point is I'm not going to ask you to like this. I'm not going to ask you to fall in love with whiskey or rum or mezcal or whatever it is that the spirit of the day is. But I'm going to do my best to help you appreciate it, so that you can at least understand what's happening in the glass and why what's in the glass is there. And I think as makers, it's even more important that we've got a rule in our house, which is always be learning. Every day you got to
Love it.
learn something. So,
Yeah, boring if you
sometimes,
don't. Like, fuck.
right? How boring if you don't. But it ties into a conversation that I'm actually having next week with Mikey Ball, who's now distilling.
Oh, yeah, down at Scapegoat, was it?
He was with
Scapegrace.
Scapegrace, but he's
Yeah.
now distilling with Woodward Street Distillery.
Yeah, I think I've judged with Mike. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you
Yeah.
have, yeah. And so
Yeah.
he's doing some great things with
Yeah, nice.
koji rice and with coconut and
Oh, it's got
like
me.
it's going to be a good time. I'll make sure you get a sample.
Yeah.
So he's doing some really interesting things, and the conversation I'm having with him next week is all about innovation, and the innovation really does not come out of thin air. It comes out of exploring ancient traditions and ancient ways of
Manuka
making.
smoked honey, Thompson. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
That
That's
rocked my
where
world. I thought, oh my God, there's Tasmania. Sorry, New Zealand whiskey. Sorry about the other island.
what?
Oh, just for a minute, you could see it. I thought you were Australian as well. So that's why I said to them.
Yeah, look, and it just about could be, given the amount of time I spend in Australia these days. For you, where does innovation sit in the landscape of, because there are so many people who are trying to innovate, but I'll put it out there, so many people who are trying to innovate, but they do it from an ideas platform rather than a knowledge and understanding platform. And so I'm not sure how often it lands. So I'm interested to hear, because I've tasted some Australian spirits that they're loaded with so much strawberry gum that I never want to eat a strawberry again.
Yeah,
Or cinnamon myrtle. Who knew that Australia had so many types of myrtle?
Myrtle.
And the idea that we grow this, we must shove it in something
You
and
know,
call
you
it
can use a word for replace for myrtle is trough lolly. Trough lolly is a hockey puck, is in male urinals.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So trough lolly. It's an Australian thing. Yeah. Again, I'll transparent. I'll just tell you one that I'm doing. Like, this is fresh. Is for 5 years I've been doing rum into off the still and water down to 60 and go to barrel. Okay, for 5 years, and now I'm going to 51.5. And yeah, it's just why is because I'm exposing myself to extraction of with the spirit and solvent get different alcohol, so I'm going to get different flavors, and everything's going to develop. But
hmm
because I love Michter's, and I found out it's one of their peer things of pillars, and they go into barrel at 51.5. There's a dual reason, but I just wanted to show, if you didn't know that, and you didn't, that's just education, understanding. It's one little thing, but
hmm
God, it's pretty exciting, and
hmm
you got to draw off those things with other spirits to, I think, be a bit more creative. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Ideas move past us all the time if we're paying attention. I think having that learning mindset is what it means to be paying attention. And if you're lucky enough, as you see the ideas come past you in that learning mindset, then you have the opportunity to go, I might take this idea and put them together. And that's often where the magic happens.
Do you want to have a quick look around?
Yeah, go on.
Office cameras.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on everything.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know how to flip the screen around, so I'll just show you here. So you sort of come out the office, tanks, got quite a lot of tanks. It's all safe as well. You can talk about that if you want. That's another pet project.
Yep.
Oh yeah, just all fermentation tanks. This is sort of zone 2, and
hmm
then through that door and then to outside is the still house, and then zone 1, which I'm not distilling at the moment. So
Yep.
here's, my 6,500 litre and 2,500 litre. We run at the same time. Yeah, heads and, 3 tanks there, heads and fours and feints, hearts, and the low one tank at the back there.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, and there's, forklift outside, but, things like, see that, yeah, but there's my, ventilation that comes into the distillery.
hmm
It's this massive amount of safety and compliance. It's a very well set up. We've got dual bunding. I don't know if you can see it there. Another bunding. Yeah, that's
Oh,
bunding.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So there's sort of multiple stages and plugs in the drains and static cables and stuff. And then, yeah, barrels. I can take you a bit of Sillador if you want to make this thing. So you got to have one of these, as we call. So it's Pro and UV.
Yep.
And so then I make my own water, add my own minerals. That's another story.
hmm You're adding your own minerals.
Yeah, once I sit down, I'll tell you that I make my own water. God, but yeah. So this is Celador.
Great. Look at that.
Yeah.
And busy
And
too.
there's some barrels where we do a bit of like a function and stuff.
Yeah. Nice.
Just make a little bit. And then we've got another 644 barrels on the other side. So there's my molasses tank behind me there, mixing tank.
Wow.
Yeah, emergency shower, emergency shut off, the dossier, safety, me.
hmm
Yeah, so the water thing was because we spent, 600,000, 500,000 on between that and Sarah and Maria, as we call them.
hmm
And it makes up, say, 50% of your spirit. And I thought, man, we're going to do something with water. So the quick of it is I tasted 27 waters from around the world, and they're all still waters. And you'd be happy to know that one was New Zealand and one was Fiji and one was Iceland. So the problem is I love all those countries. And my wife is Icelandic, so I had a problem. So what it does is put all 3 waters together, and I created a country that doesn't exist. And believe it or not, I thought, shit, this water's even better. So then I got that water tested, and it told me all the trace elements, and now that's the water I make. So I strip everything out of it through UV and RO and a whole lot of filters before it. And that's the water I use to break it down from cask strength or down to bottled product strength and for consistency, texture, flavour, and stability. So there's no calcium or magnesium problems, excess with, I was going to say acrylic, what's the other? Acrylic, yeah. So you get, stones developing and stuff like that. So
Were you this exacting as a winemaker?
sort of.
Mm. Has the precision increased as you learn more and as you acquire more skills? It's like I think about it
Yeah, it's
often
what I have.
as in this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's a little bit clearer.
hmm
Yeah. The winemaking, honestly, it's really only the fermentation. The distilling, I just, and that's the thing. When I came across, I just had I had the 2. I had the foundation certificate and the general certificate, the IBD. And then I did my diploma after. I realised how much I didn't know. And yeah, the sides of the was the safety was the other issue. And I just, because I'm working by myself, you start, shit, if I do this, what else? And so yeah, I just went off and again thought I need to fight fear with fear, and so I went and did a diploma in workplace health and safety, did an ICAM, did an auditing, and my last one was a professional certificate from the Engineering Institute for hazardous areas, and a great journey. But again, I've just become more passionate, like in safety as well. I don't want my friends to die. I don't want my staff to die. I don't want to die.
Mm.
From a stupid event that we think we know everything, and she'll be right, mate. And guess what? It won't. And unfortunately, I've got to say that someone's going to have to die in Australia or close to us before some people wake up to it. And
Mm.
you just got to be super careful. And there's too many cowboys, and they can say whatever they want to me. I don't really care. I've gone down the journey, and I know what you need to do. And I'm not out on an island. I'm trying to help people. Matter of fact, I think it's the 23rd of June. I'm speaking to Spirits Atoa. How do you say it? Aratoa.
Distilled Spirits Aotearoa. Yes, I think you
That's
are.
it.
You're doing a
You say
DSA.
that, yeah.
It's a DSA members webinar, but it's actually open to anybody,
Oh,
I
okay.
believe.
Cool.
And I think, do you feel, in this, not that we need to get like emotional, but do you feel a little bit like I grew up with the saying that prophet's always without honor in his hometown. Do you feel a little bit like a prophet without honor when it comes to the safety messaging
Yeah.
and
It's
wanting to
just,
help people get where they need to be, but feeling
it's
a little
just
bit like people have got other priorities?
sad. That's all. It's sad. And it's almost a little bit upsetting for me in some cases. And I'll just be real. I mean, I did the same talk I'm doing for you guys. I did it to the Queensland distilleries. There's 75, I think, and I had
Mm.
15. You know,
Wow.
like 15, good on you. 15, that's great. But where the hell are the other 60? Like, Jesus Christ.
Mm.
And again, I'll be vocal about that. And they can say, oh, my business is fine. Yeah, okay, fine. If you talk about it, test it. Like, so have you got a hazardous area auditor that's ticked off your place, and has everything been installed by hazardous area electricians? And do you have the compliance and certificate? Like, that's where it's at. And yes, it may cost money, but now I'm trying to help people to save money, to do a lot of that yourself and get it ticked off. And
Mm.
that's my journey now, because I just thought, no, I'm not being held back. I want to help people more. But it's like, I don't know, it's like I'm talking goobly gook. Maybe that is a problem. Maybe I am talking goobly gook. And, like the end of the thing, there was, they all found it interesting, but there was virtually 2 questions. Like, I'm just thinking, I don't know. I've reread
Mm.
the slides again, and it's pretty, no, there's not basic. There's nothing technical in there, but it's just like, what I'm offering to help you guys. And I've got a potential thing I'm trying to do is do an app. Because, fuck it. Put everything on an app. Can't do it properly, put it on an app. Everyone's got a phone. So I'm trying to,
Mhm.
you know, do that
Mm.
just to
What
help.
drives you?
Just
Like, as a whole human being, Not that whole, like, "Oh,
Yeah, look,
well."
I do like those things. I know what I was like in the winemaking side of things, and the workplace health and safety. I just find it a pain in the ass. So over here, and it's like what I said to you before about, I don't advise you why. I've got this education thing in my head that if you have why, I have to go and I have to know. I have to know why it affects me. It really does. So I have a fear of the just hating workplace health and safety. So that's why I went off and studied it. That was the first thing. And then I just found it, I found it relaxed. I thought, mate, this stuff's actually kind of fun. And
Mhm.
that's the way I've tried to turn it around for people and not go through what I went through, which was fucking hell, and everyone's a dickhead and don't waste your money on that. And, that's sort of why I'm trying to make it fun. That's my interpretation, and I've written a good 45-page document for it, and I'm trying to convert that into an app that I just think people go, fuck, this is great. Because I honestly believe it is. It's not trying to make my life hard. I'm trying to give back to, if I could just create and fucking give you a needle, like a COVID jab, I'd do it. And that's a safety app. I just want to create a safety needle and infect everyone. And again, it's just something that just makes sense. There's a guy 2 or 3 weeks ago died in Florida. It's actually called Inverness. I thought it was in Scotland. There is, but this one's in Florida, and we still don't know yet. But it sounds he's pressurised the still and it exploded, and then maimed 2 other people, and the guy died. Like, it's just sad. Like, and then you see his wife. You see like the whole thing. Like, if you're not a distiller and that doesn't somehow not bring a tear to your eye, but somebody got mad, that's really sad. And if you don't go out and go, oh, what do I do here? But even, things like, just get back to reality, we've got all these gin schools, bubbling around with, 5 litre and 10 litre pots. They don't have pressure relief valves on them. It's just, they're just bombs. They're just bombs, and they're given to people who've got no idea of the public what they're dealing with. And if one little juniper berry goes up over the top and into that little worm tub, it's going to block. So, I've got one here, but I've got a very simple pressure relief hose on the side of it. And I'm thinking, well, who else has a pressure relief valve on a little pot still? And they don't. I've got 2. I've made another. I've got a valve, and then I've got this manometer thing, which is it goes up and then it goes down like a U, and on the U, you just put some water in there. So the vapor can't really get out. So it still goes up the still. But if there's any excess pressure, it's just going to blow it out before your pressure relief valve's going to work. So this is just basic engineering. And mate, it was $250 to put it on my big still. So $500 for both stills. And this other one, and I'll show it to you. It's just, you shut me down if I'm too boring.
No, it's good. I'm going to wrap us in about 5 minutes, but this is great. And especially because I want people to hear this. I want people to be able to hear this before sign-up's finished. Yeah, look at that. That's great.
It's a 20 litre still. So what I do, right, now you've seen that hose, I just do that. It's like a fig.
Yep.
And in the bottom loop, that's where water goes. And and this goes up and fits on the side of the sill. Like, seriously, how much is it? Like $6?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I go back to how many of these little stills are around the world. Oh, if it was a problem, everyone would die. Okay, that's fine. But guess what? I'm not going to be one of them. That's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
God help. Things that I show and try to help people with it. Like, it's not hard.
There's something in it which I don't even like to call it consumer first, but it's actually having a consumer heartbeat. Because if you have a consumer heartbeat, right, you care about people first. So you care about making something people enjoy, but you care about doing it in a way that people can enjoy it and be safe. And you care about looking after the people that are making it, including yourself. And it's just having that sense of, my heart beats in a way that I'm naturally thinking about other people and thinking about some of those safety measures. It's crucially important, and that startup kind of DIY mentality that people think that's the least important thing because I'm the person that's in harm's way, but actually it's the most important. And there've been too many close calls.
You know what I say to those people?
Yeah.
Go and lie in a coffin and put a metre of dirt over you and see how that feels, because that's how you're going to end up. Like, maybe not, but why risk it? Like, this is my level.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Risk.
Why risk it? That's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, anyway.
Yeah. Leave risk for your shares portfolio.
Can you get more than 15 distillers for this thing on the 23rd or whenever it is? More than 15.
Look, I'll do my best. I thought you were powerful over there.
Are you joking?